Hey guys, in this video, we're going to move on to a more advanced example on candidate moves. And the cool thing about this example is that we have zero chance to solve it unless we do a good job of listing candidate moves. So let's get to it. This is actually a position from Sam Shanklin's book on calculation in a chapter called candidates. So we're lucky we kind of have a clue as to how we're going to solve this problem. So when you see this position, I think the first thing that should stand out is White's amazing centralization. I mean, this is a beautiful configuration of pieces in the center. White's harmony is obviously much better. Black's pieces don't make a great impression. Their rooks are not connected. They have a kind of a loose knight on the side of the board, and their queen is somewhere offside. Okay, so let's start listing our candidate moves. Checks. Do we have checks? We don't really have any good checks. Yeah, it's kind of obvious that giving up your queen on d8 is not a good idea. So captures, yeah, there's a really obvious one, right? I think a lot of you will have seen this move pretty quickly. Like that needs to be calculated. Definitely feels like one of the main ideas in the position because you got a lot of firepower on the E file. Candidate moves. Let's see what else. If that doesn't work out, what can we do? I mean, it could be an attack, like queen d7 on the f7 pawn. Maybe some kind of an attack on this loose knight. I mean, there's like a bunch of ways you can attack it with the queen. Maybe attack with the pawn, right? I mean, I'm listing moves, guys, that I don't find particularly convincing, right? Like I'm kind of forcing myself to do it. I don't really want to like play queen d1, right? It doesn't feel right. But still, you know, I know that to find the best move in chess, at least I know it theoretically, you just have to open your mind to all kinds of moves. So that's kind of the beginning point. But then I was like, is there anything else? Like anything else that maybe makes sense that we haven't listed yet? And then I saw it, this little pawn move, right? Why would we ever even like kind of think about that when we have so many more attractive moves to start with, right? Like, don't we just want to jump right in to the knight sack? Looks a lot more forcing. Like, why would this pawn move be so attractive to us? Well, you know, we want to trap their queen. It's a way of making a threat. It protects the b2 pawn, actually, with this queen. Maybe the pawn move is useful in some way, right? So we listed the candidate moves. Now let's get to the one that seems most natural to us. Knight takes f7, right? So this is where we can use our understanding, our intuition, obviously to select this move as the one that interests us the most, right? Because compared to all the other ones, this one feels like it's the most forcing. But the problem is that black captures here. And when we capture, let's say with the rook, they capture back with the queen. So their king is not coming out, it's their queen who comes back to defend, and we basically gave away a piece for nothing. So we're like, huh, yeah, that queen on a2 is kind of playing an important defensive role for black, isn't she? Now, by the way, when they take on e3, we could, you know, throw in this capture with the knight to open up their king a bit more and then recapture. That's a better way of doing it. But it's still like we're not winning here. Black can always bring the knight to defend. At some point, they can, you know, bring back their queen, bring in their rook, and they're not actually getting mated. So we realize that, you know, the move we really want to play just has a big flaw. Okay, so what should we go to? Like, just completely different ideas? Like attacking their knight on h5? Like, nope. You know, because, you know, we did list that move c4. And now it starts to look more interesting, doesn't it? Because it kind of cuts the queen. And black has to move back to avoid the being trapped. And now we have a chance to look at this move again. Although I would say that at this point, I was also very much enticed by this sort of other candidate move that tries to pull the queen away to b4 for some ideas that I had. So knight f7 is not like the only move in the position at this point, but let's consider it. Like before, they cannot take our knight because we take their rook. So they must take. Again, you either take this rook with the queen or knight, or the queen or rook, or you give up the knight. So it's the question of like how to take the rook, right? But taking with a rook seems most natural. Like you sort of keep the queen on the open file and the rook on the other one. And they take. And yeah, these arrows. And now white again has to choose between how to capture this rook with the queen or the rook, or they can always give up their knight for that pawn. But, taking with the rook does look the most natural because you're keeping your queen on an open file with the rook on the other one. And we reach this position, which is quite critical. It feels like white should have something, right? White has a harmonious placement of the queen and rook. The king has been brought out to the open, and we just have to find the winning move. But here again, we are not going to be able to succeed without doing a good job at candidate moves, because it's not as simple as like, oh, I'll just give a check. Yeah, you can give a check and the king will escape. You can give another check and the king will escape, and then we're going to be down a knight and resigning. Right? So let's do this the right way before we even go down into any line. Let's list the candidate moves. Well, there is the check with the queen. There is the check with the rook. There's also like noticing that this square could be really nice if we could get a check over here, but we can't right now. So maybe b4 comes to mind as a candidate to try to lure the queen away. And there is the double attack on the queen and knight. We can take a look at that. But the funny thing is, like, those are the most natural moves, and they're not going to wind up winning for white. White, that's actually what I struggled with in this position, because I did try to list all the candidate moves. I thought I listed them, but I missed one. And the one I missed was actually the winning one. So we'll get to that at the end. By the way, rook f3 is pretty useless because all these moves just help the black king escape. Like the safer you make their king, the less ideas you're going to have. Rook e5 doesn't work because they give you a check and then they save their knight. And then their knight is going to guard those two squares and you're not going to have any checks. So b4 is interesting, but they don't have to cooperate with you. They can go this way, holding that square. And even when you try to get them off of it again, they have either rook d8 or queen d8 where they keep control over d5 and black is still fine. So yeah, queen d7, one of my students impulsively tried this move. Like, giving a bunch of checks is not a recipe for winning a chess game necessarily. And then this double attack always gets met with a check on a1, and then the knight saves itself and white's attack is over. So you have to be careful about what you're doing because black is sort of one move away from, getting to safety. The only problem with black's position at the moment is this like very temporary lack of harmony and king weakness, right? Like if black could just put the knight on f6, well, he'd be winning. Like pretty much any move that black could do, like improving the queen or the rook or the knight or the king, but I think black would just be winning, right? So it's like we have one chance to strike. We got to get it right. So the candidate we haven't listed yet is this quiet queen move. What is the power behind this move. I mean, it seems like very mild compared to all the other moves we looked at. It's not a check. It's only an attack on this rook, a single attack, not even a double attack. But as it turns out, it's really hard for black to save that rook, because every square on the 8th rank that she has is going to lose in some way. You guys can sort of figure out most of these things, but I'll just show you this one. Here we just give a check, and then we catch the rook like that. And, we're going to be up in exchange with a completely winning position here. Obviously they can't get too close because of that double attack. But it's all about the double attack is going to happen on the next move, right? It starts as like an attack on one piece, but it will soon be an attack on two pieces. Queen e6 wins this one, and you can't really go to the other side of the king because then nobody is covering the 8th rank. So black gets mated. It's even worse. So I was quite pleased with this whole puzzle, I have to say, because it really illustrates so well, like, the power of considering candidate moves. Like, let's backtrack a little bit. So the first thing is that c4 is not the most obvious move in the position. It's not the most forcing, right? And we kind of realized its power after we explored the sacrifice of the knight in f7. But it was really helpful to already know that this move existed as a candidate. So by kind of doing a good layout of the candidates at the beginning, we gave ourselves a chance at solving this position. So c4 was one of the big challenges. Knight f7 here is not a big challenge, right? It's sort of like an obvious idea that we've been looking at forever. And the next big challenge, it really comes, yeah, I have to show you some sidelines. But the next big challenge in our main line really was like, where's the win here, right? The king has been brought out, we feel like there's something here, but it was actually surprisingly tricky. And it was solved with a quiet move. Again, candidates, right? It's just like, what kind of attacks can I make in this position? Even if they don't seem like the most powerful ones. Like, obviously we like double attacks more, right? We kind of want to get an attack on through the d5 square. Those seem like a lot more powerful, but the quiet queen e4 is actually the only winning move in this position. Let's go back a little bit. I will just fill in the details here. One of the tricky things about this position for me was that actually rook takes e3 is only one of black's moves. It's definitely like a main option, but there's another main option, and that is the queen sack. So black could certainly feel, the danger and try to avoid it, and so they might go for this line. We should see that as white. And this is actually the best move for black. And it was a little tricky for me to evaluate this position because black has 2 rooks for the queen and pawn. But we do, and you can't take the knight because of queen d5. So black goes rook f8. And yeah, this whole position was not very clear to me, but apparently if like white moves their knight somewhere, white is better. It's not like the game is over, but I guess we just have to make an evaluation, like the queen and pawn are preferable over the 2 rooks. And of course, this is not the only move. Like we need to calculate things like that. Speaking about candidate moves, like is definitely one. Where we take another pawn and try to like win this knight. And seems like this could be really good for white. This was surprisingly not that strong for white. Like white doesn't have a way to actually win one of the rooks and like use that exposed king. That's definitely a tricky line that could really get our attention and be not so easy to evaluate actually. because the black king looks really open and these rooks are not defending each other yet. But apparently white doesn't have a way to win them. So that's kind of like a false trail, and white should refrain from sacking the knight on h6. Yeah, but the move queen e1 is actually really important in the evaluation of the position. You don't want to miss a resource like that for black, giving up the queen for 2 rooks, because it's like a completely different ball game than, you know, where they sort of bring out their king into the open and, you know, give you that chance to attack. All right, guys, I think we covered this example pretty thoroughly. But I really enjoyed the process of solving it, like, because it was very much a, like a step-by-step process. It wasn't like you just look at the position and there's the answer right in front of you. Like, it was kind of hidden behind a lot of tricky candidate moves. So yeah, hope you appreciated that one.